Hello everyone, welcome to the island. As we all know from Stranded, the short little build series I did here. And I want to do like an open house because I did, finish the island build, but I also thought it would be interesting maybe to see a more in-depth and detailed look at some of the locations that I needed to build for the story portion of that whole series. I had pretty much 4 locations that I was using. Obviously the island, which is part of DLC content. The desert island is one of the VR locations. We got the main house, we got the garden, we got the little gazebo thing, and then also, some of the other little things that I built quick for some of the scenes in the whole story part of the build. So like the exit pipe and things like that, which are all on the island. But then there's also a lot of stuff I built in the grid, which is another location from the Creation Club. And in the grid is where I built like a lot of the interior of the vault, because I needed a lot of space to do that because of the long stairs and going down into, and I figured that was just the best area to do it because it was just open, clean space. And then once I did that, I added on the cryo vault, interior of the pipes for some of that I did there. So it served as a good location to just kind of add stuff. But all of these are separate little builds, so almost like a movie set. So I'll go into detail and tour those and give you a little better look at those. Another spot was the Atomic Crater, which was a good area to basically build the secondary outpost. So all of that structure and all those scenes were basically made there. The other location was Vault 88. I needed a lot of cave-like rock because that's what I wanted to do for some of the interior of the whole vault that is supposed to be on the island, the mysterious vault. So I figured once I clear out Vault 88, there's a lot of rock wall, a lot of space there. Now, much like a movie set would have all that rock there already built, and I can just build onto that and into that, and it kind of solves the purpose of not having to build giant rock walls. So I just figured this was a good area to do that. We got the portal lab, we got the portal gate, which I built into one of the tubes there because I thought that would work good. And then we got the giant warehouse thing, and then some other spots I just built in to do some of the shots, which required some creative ideas and to how to get some of these shots. Because I'm on a console, like I have to rely on just capturing gameplay. So it's really difficult to get the shots that I want of, say, our character. So it's pretty much just gameplay, and there's a lot of things I would like to have done, but I'm pretty limited as far as what I can capture or make the character do and try and capture it on video, so to speak. So I'll jump into some of those little details there and a little more insight into some of the other locations and their use and how they were built. Now, one of the main characters of this whole thing and the whole reason behind this series is the island, which is the Creation Club VR workshop. And this is one of the locations that allows you to go and build. And it's pretty much a blank island, which is what created the idea of kind of building more of like a castaway type survival house, or whatever you want to call it. So I was just going to do a build there, and that triggered the idea of maybe making more of a story, like being shipwrecked there or stranded there. And as that went on, that became more of a mystery on the island, which then involved the vault and discovering all that. So it just kind of grew from there. But the original idea was to basically be stranded on an island and building a shelter with whatever you could find that washed up on the beach. Now the final shelter that I did build there is pretty elaborate for things that you would find on the beach, but it was just more of a concept and something fun to do with a build series. The actual shelter itself I tried to build basically like if it was a bunch of found material, things that washed ashore or something like that. So I built the main house in a scrappy way, like you had found things on the beach. A lot of the furniture and stuff that I wanted to put in there, that wound up coming from the so-called vault on the island, just because there's a lot of stuff that I just don't think would wash up on shore. Pretty basic, pretty simple, you know. It's got the bedroom area, which is filled with a bunch of stuff, a lot of stuff that's washed ashore, but also a lot of stuff from, say, the vault. So nice little cozy bedroom there.
After a good night's sleep, I awoke the next morning to the unnerving sight of Garden Pete staring at me.
One thing I had to do in the bedroom is there was a shot I wanted to get of our gorilla Garden Pete, and I wanted more of a close-up shot, and I tried spawning the NPC gorilla in the room to try and get an angle, and it would never get in the spot that I wanted. So I basically rebuilt some of the bedroom out on this rock so I could get a lower angle of the NPC gorilla. I didn't completely rebuild the whole bedroom, just a certain portion of the wall and, say, the ceiling, just to get that close-up shot of the gorilla. I thought, you know, having a platform a little bit higher and I'd be able to look up and get that angle. But it took quite a few times of getting that gorilla to get to the spot, because I can't control where it really goes. I can only spawn the NPC and then hope it makes its way back to that spot. It took quite a few tries, but once I got the shot, I then added it to my sequence. A lot of excessive work just for one little shot, but I think it was worth it, and I really wanted to get it. We got somewhat of a living room with a nice patio deck looking out to the ocean, which I thought would just be great at the location that we're at. Why not enjoy it if you're stuck there forever? Might as well enjoy the scenery and the water and the sunsets and all that. So that's why I built it up on the rock high and looking out. Cooking kitchen area. I just wanted to add that in, you know, just so we had a cooking area to use and also to build. Then outside and just off of the kitchen is some stairs leading up to our garden area, which was added on later, but I wanted to add in some kind of growing area to grow food and add a little more survival type stuff to this build. So that's why I decided to put the garden up there, and pretty simple and pretty scrappy, nothing too elaborate. Now the water that I put in the story mode to the garden, so that I basically built the waterfall over on some other rocks, the water coming down through the kind of wooden trough system, leading the water down, and then I built the end part into the garden. So realistically, those spots are not connected at all, but I just wanted to give the visual look of it. As we come back down from the garden, off to the right is the outhouse area and kind of storage. That came pretty early in the build as well, just to add some more stuff there. And just below that is where the gazebo portion was eventually built. And that was just another way to add something to the build, because I needed more things to build just to keep the series going. So I figured why not throw in like some kind of, extra gazebo thing, which isn't necessarily needed, but it was another, portion of the build. And there was another way to build up this hill and kind of flatten out that section, so I was able to build something on there. Now, just off of the living room is the main staircase coming up from the beach, which is how you would access this house from the beach. And that was built pretty early on, and that also involved a secondary deck area, which turned into the overlook outpost, kind of guard shack type thing that was put there. And that was just another thing that I wanted to build and add. So that was pretty much the main idea of this build, is this house. Nothing too crazy, pretty simple. Now, some of the additional things that I did build on the island was also to create the illusion of being stranded, things washing ashore. So say, for instance, the crashed airliner, there were some scraps like that in one of the mods, so I thought, why not arrange some of those to make it look like maybe a plane had crashed here. And I also did a Freddy Bird crash on another section.
There is evidence of others who have suffered my same fate. Unfortunately for them, they aren't looking too good.
So those were good elements just to add based on some of the building objects that I had. And I also wanted to add in a bunch of stuff on the shoreline to look like other things have washed ashore. So we have the sunken boats and all the containers that maybe fell off and washed ashore from other ships. Just other elements to give me things to build with, or give me an excuse to have certain items to build with. And then eventually adding in the barge, which would have a lot of objects or elements that I would use for the build. So that served that purpose as well. Elsewhere on the island were other spots that I just kind of built rather quickly just to get the shot that I needed. So the whole grave site area, that was just a quick little thing I built up on the hillside just to get that shot of like the sunset with the grave markers and that. And then another main location on the island that I just kind of added was the front facade of the entrance to the mysterious vault.
Buried deep in the rock face, choked with vines and island overgrowth, was some kind of massive man-made concrete entrance or door.
Now, I knew I didn't have a way to build a vault down into the ground in this area, so I decided just to separate the front entrance on the island, and then I would build the interior of the vault in the grid. So I found a good spot on the island where I could create my main front entrance into this abandoned vault. And that basically consisted of the actual, vault door that rolls out and comes out, but also like a main outside entrance, gate, wall, and an entrance room going into the vault, all that stuff that makes it look like it's built into the rock. And then I would try to do a seamless cut of opening the vault door and then going into the vault. And once I went into the vault, all that stuff would be using my builds in the grid.
My good senses and the overall stench and creepiness of this place is telling me to hold off, or wait until I can find some kind of weapon to beat the living hell out of whatever jumps out at me. But logical thinking is taken over by my burning curiosity as to what secrets lie beyond.
So that vault entrance was all built here on the island, and also the exit pipe that the character uses to get out, that was just a tiny end section that I built into the rock just to get that one shot of him coming out of the pipe. All the rest of the piping was done either in the grid or in Vault 88.
I made a rather handy raft with some empty barrels and wood planks.
Another thing I did on the island was a raft. So in the story portion of the build, I had a raft that was transporting some of the stuff that was taken from the vault back to the main shelter. I did need some kind of shot that showed the transportation of these items. So it basically came down pretty simple, nothing fancy, just a little compositing combination in After Effects. What I did is I got a good wide shot, kind of like a plate shot in a way of the water. And then I built my raft in the water and added my items onto the raft. I masked out the top portion of all the items and then a little bit of water down below the barrel pontoons. Then I also masked out another portion to add a little bit of feather to the water. Then that basically went over top of our water plate shot, so these two items would blend in pretty well. And then it looks like the raft is floating along. So nothing spectacular, pretty simple. Just had to try and come up with a clever way of doing that. And there are some other things on the island that I used a little bit of tricks to do with, for example, like the cannon hitting the wildlife on the island. Pretty simple, basic After Effects type stuff. So as far as the island goes, that pretty much covers everything that I built there that was used in the series and also in the build. So that's pretty much our main location, but there are others. Now for the story portion, I needed a lot of interior sets that I needed to build. For example, on the island, we have the hidden vault, and obviously I wouldn't be able to build a vault on that island. I need to go underground, so I needed a large space. I felt like the grid was a great place to do all these different sets, mainly because they were interior sets. So that's why I like the grid, is I'm able to build these things and I don't need to deal with any other elements in the game or any kind of landscaping or trees that might pose a problem. So the grid worked perfect for that. So the main one in the grid is this big, large interior of the vault as you first come in, with the long extended staircase and down into the secondary vault area with the water coming through the window. And that basically started from the opening, just to replicate what I built on the island. So as you come through, then you'd see this opening room. And I really wanted to make this overgrown, very abandoned, because I wanted to keep that kind of mysterious, scary mood for the story portion. So I built a lot of decay and used a lot of elements that were worn and a lot of weeds, a lot of hanging weeds, things like that, just to give it a look like it's been there a long time. And then from there, it's the long staircase, just because I thought a long staircase that goes down into the darkness would be pretty creepy. So I added that in for that one door. Then the other door off to the right, that was just another storage room and a little bunk area with a shower and items like that. Now I built that basically for the story portion because I needed certain items I wanted to add to the building of the survival house. So by having this room, there's a lot of elements that I could do, like shelves, the bunk bed, pieces of furniture, art on the wall, things like that I'd then be able to bring and use for my house build. Now back to the staircase. The staircase goes down, and then I didn't want it to go all the way down. I wanted it to stop at a little landing. And on this landing would be two doors, one on the right, one on the left. And the idea of that is by adding these doors, later on I can explore the vault and then find out what is, behind these doors or add something in. And I did wind up using the door on the right to enter into another office area, which was part of the story, where our character discovers another body in the bathroom.
Inside, there was another crusty guest sitting on the toilet. For real, it looks like he died in the middle of dropping a deuce. I didn't want to disturb his eternal movement, so I carefully reached around him and grabbed the stim packs from the med box.
To get some of the battle damage look in the interior of this office, I threw some grenades around to get the blast marks on the floor. And then also another door that leads down into another office area, which had all the bodies piled up.
Lying in a pile on the floor are dead, crusty bodies. A lot of bodies.
There's not really too much to this room. It was basically a filler room to be able to put all the bodies. So I didn't go into a whole lot of detail when I was building it. A lot of damage, a lot of debris, a lot of vines, and just signs of it being old, just to add to the whole mystery, because this is the place where our character for the first time finds out about the whole mysterious monster in the vault.
On second thought, maybe not.
Then headed back up and back into the long staircase that goes all the way down into this other large storage area. Now the large room in the bottom here is meant to be more of like another storage area, nothing too specific as far as items. It's a lot of boxes, a lot of machinery. I basically found anything I could and just filled it up, added in a few skeletons just to show that it was abandoned and there's something creepy going on in this vault. I added in another back room through this door that goes through the waterfall. And this also has a staircase that is flooded and also has another door. And I put those in just because I wasn't sure where I was going with the story at this time. And I thought we have the option of swimming down underwater through that stairwell into another area, which would be cool, or through this other door. And the other door played into going into another hallway. Well, that hallway was also another set that I built here on the grid, but totally separate from this door, which is leading into another flooded area where we see another skeleton and then stairs leading up. And I wanted a cool hallway leading down to another door. This door then opens up into what is the big giant cryo vault. Now, the cryo vault is just something, I wanted to build something on a grand scale, something really large, so you get a little more shock and awe when you open the door and discover this even bigger vault area. And this too was more of a cleaner one and also one with power, and it was actually operating, which the other ones were not. So this is a different area of the vault, more mysterious circumstances going on where now there's power and it seems like there's life in this part of the vault. This build originally started, I didn't really have much of a plan. I just know I wanted to build something giant, and I wanted to use some of the vault pieces to do that. And the big raised ceiling vault pieces were great for that. This long, skinny thing that housed just rows and rows of these cryo tubes. I added in a couple doors on the side, another couple on the other side, and a couple in the back, just so later on, as I developed the story, or if I wanted to, develop it more, I had more mysterious doors that would lead to somewhere that I could make whatever I wanted. But in this case, I just needed this cryo vault to be able to get through where we see the big overseer's window, which actually was not built here in the grid. That part of the office was actually built in Vault 88. But as far as this area here, this was the larger of all the builds, and something I wanted to, put in a lot of detail with it, with all the cryo vaults and this giant power generator system, which I used a lot of different pieces to create something that maybe was unique and something of its own. So that was kind of fun to make it look like some kind of functioning power source. As far as the grid here, there's another area that I wanted to build, and that is the pipe system where our character escapes out of the vault through the pipe. And I just thought this was a good area because it was just open, and I needed a very long pipe to get the interior shots of him running through and eventually leading him out. So all these three locations had a part in the story, and I definitely think the grid was really good for what I needed it on these, which is strictly interior. Now for more exterior type stuff, that's when I chose to use Vault 88. Vault 88 was a good location mainly because what I needed rocks, because this whole hidden vault is supposed to be underground, hidden, and I wanted the ability to use some of Vault 88, which is obviously underground and already has the cave kind of carved out rock here. So I wanted to use a lot of that in Vault 88. The overseer's office that we get to from the cryo vault, one of my ideas early on was seeing some of that cave ceiling, some of that rock ceiling, which is why I started building the office there rather than the grid. Because looking out that window, I figured, we'll see the cave ceiling and it'll be really cool and we'll be able to add it in and it'll look the same. But in the long run, I basically built the cryo vault with its own ceiling. So we didn't really need to have it that way, but I did wind up building it in two separate areas. It was just a cut from one to the other, so location-wise, it didn't matter if they were actually connected. We didn't need to really see that visually. We know where he was going because he was looking at the vault window, and then we cut to the office. And then there's more interaction later where you see the round window. So Vault 88 had a lot of these interior shots of this part of the story, and that includes, like I said here, this main office, which I wanted to make nice and fancy, and this is where another one of the doctors was at, that we would get some of his audio recordings to help propel the story forward a little and add a little more mystery.
My team was overwhelmed Security had to be called in, and it was at this point that I ordered the termination of the subject. But it was too late. Its power surged beyond containment, and I was forced to seal the room.
This main office was also an area for our character to get trapped when the other mysterious monster decides to try and hunt him down. Now the door banging thing was real simple, another After Effects kind of thing. Nothing fancy or nothing really intricate, just adding in the door and then adding in a bulge effect and then throwing in some dust when it hits and then a little shake on the camera to just give it that extra pound, and then layering in obviously the sound effects, which helps a lot. So that was pretty simple, and I was able to do that here. Another part of the story and a lot of use of the cave ceiling and cave walls here in Vault 88 was a lot of the walkways leading to our little portal lab type area, because I wanted more traveling. I needed more, mysterious discovery and things to add a little tension here and there, just so we're not always in like a vault hallway. And that's why Vault 88 worked perfect for that.
Oh, man!
Fascinating.
Once I cleared out the vault, I found some good areas that already had all the rock facade and stuff in the background. All I needed to do was lay in my catwalks and kind of figure out where it was going and what I was using it for in the story. And in this case, it comes to another large kind of vault type door, which I essentially built into the rock. It doesn't lead into where it's supposed to go, but I just needed the facade of the door. And once again, using the editing by, cutting from door to door, I was able to do that. But the hallway leading up to it got that really cool cave look, mainly because it was here in Vault 88. Now the large door, pretty simple, just built a door face, a bunch of concrete, just to make it look like it was built into the rock. And that's the end, kind of leads to a dead end, so I just put the door there. And then when that door opens, that would then lead into the lab.
The tunnel was long and very dark. It was hard to see exactly where I was going.
Now, touching on our character falling through the ceiling and into the hallway, he's walking through the interior of the vent that he escapes through, which was basically a side shot of one of the subway tunnels in Vault 88. And then I just built a small platform and tried to get a shot that just made it look like he was walking through the confined tunnel. Now, the falling through the ceiling thing actually came about by accident, because I was getting the shot of my character crawling through that portion of the vent where he escapes from. And I basically walked off the edge of what I built, so he kind of fell. And I thought, that would be cool if he fell through the ceiling. I then had to figure out, how am I going to get him to fall through the ceiling? So what I decided to do, one of these people walking around the vault volunteered to be our little dummy here. So once they were dead, wearing a hazmat suit and all ragdolled, you get the visual idea that it might be our character. Well, how do I get it to fall through the ceiling was my next problem, because I can only capture what my character sees. So it's very difficult to make something happen, but get the shot too. And that's when I thought of the giant mortar, which I had used to get a lot of the shots in my Deadbeat Davy series. So I thought that might apply here. I just had to figure out how I was going to get it to fall in through the ceiling. So what I did is I built my hallway set to look just like the other one, or as much like it as I could, and built like a giant funnel in a way that funneled down through the hole in the ceiling. And then my idea was I would shoot the poor volunteer up in the air that would hopefully land in this funnel and then funnel its way down and then fall through the ceiling, allowing me time to switch the mortar to fire, get into position to get that last shot of it coming through the hallway ceiling. Which is pretty elaborate, but it actually worked out pretty good. It took quite a few times to actually make that happen just right, just to get the shot that I needed, but it worked. One of the major sets here in Vault 88 would be in the whole jump portal itself, which I wanted to use, once again, one of the subway tunnels in Vault 88, just because it had that giant round circle area, which I thought would work perfect for some kind of portal door, and is already pre-built. And I don't really have objects like that to build something on that grand scale. So I started building into this subway tube by using the Institute teleporter pad and did a quappa tilt and tilt that sideways so it would fit perfect in our subway tube here. Started growing from there, or then I added in a walkway path and various other elements to build up that to look more like some kind of time portal or portal gate. Once I had the portal gate all built, I needed to build the room that housed this portal gate. So then that is what brought upon, building that room, which was more the portal room, setting up the portal for travel, and then jumping in. So we'd have some scenes in there as well. So this upper room would be more of like a lab area. So in the story portion, our character would discover this room. It's just a combination of those institute type things with some cafe countertops, the stainless steel. It's a very clean look for the lab. And any kind of lab type stuff I could find, I just added in just to fill up this office or this lab area to give that illusion that there was a lot of research going on and maybe more mystery to add to our story. Now the whole monster breaking through the lab door is another After Effects thing. I basically took a still image of the door and kind of broke it up into pieces and then animated each of those pieces, and then had a few different layers masked out, added a little explosion. So not really high quality, but a quick and easy way to kind of animate that door breaking. However, before the monster breaks through the door, our character finds another door that leads into the secondary room that has the portal gate. Now the portal gate itself, I knew I was going to have to do some kind of animation type stuff for the whole portal gate and the portal jumping and whatnot. And I didn't want to get too intricate or involved in that in regards to, special effects or things like that. So I just wanted to do more overlay stuff, which is what I did. I tried to keep it pretty simple because, like I said, I didn't want to spend a lot of time, trying to do this because it already takes long enough to do one of these episodes. Just something to give the illusion that it was coming to life and there was portal opening to a different dimension or a different time. Another large set here in Vault 88 that required a lot of space, but I also wanted to take advantage of a lot of the rock on the wall and things like that, is the big warehouse scene where it has all the radioactive barrels. I also needed another way for the character to get out of the vault, and that was the pipes leading out. That was the idea, is to have a pipe leading out so our character could get out and also back in. So I wanted to find some area that I could turn into like maybe some kind of sewer or something of that nature. And this area in Vault 88 I thought worked perfect. It is essentially where the big water filter thing is in the game. So as I came in, I thought this might be a good area to use the water there on the bottom, but build up around it to look more like a sewage area where I could put the 2 pipes and another pipe at the other end and make it look as if it was some kind of drainage area. And then with that, I built a large warehouse area because our character would come into the warehouse looking for another way to escape. That's where he would see the drainage area here with the pipes. So this warehouse, I wanted to be large, and I wanted to store a ton of radioactive barrels and give the idea that maybe they were dumping a lot of this radioactive material down in the sewer there, which is where our character would have to escape out of. Now that we've established the portal gate, the question is, where does it go? Which is another location from the Creation Club, virtual workshop, the Atomic Crater. So this build here in the Atomic Crater was going to be the secondary outpost at the end of the portal bridge. This is where Dr. Kulkarni, according to the audio records, would jump to and do some more research. And once again, this would be an abandoned place, a little worn down, but not too worn down, just because it was sealed off from the elements. But I wanted a harsh environment to maybe give the idea that maybe the jump was to a different planet or a different realm or a different dimension. So the harsh weather and being trapped in this little vault-style home or research outpost. That was a combination of just adding things that I thought might work in something like this, which is an outpost. And then adding in another storage area outside, which might be a good area to have extra supplies or things like that if I needed it in the story. I never did end up using that area, but I thought it looked cool. It just added a little more mystery to this whole site of what it was, what went on, what happened. As far as the interior goes, that I wanted a lab type area just to show whoever was here was doing a lot of research. And then I needed a computer terminal station. And then also a living area where we could discover Kulkarni's body and just to have a living situation or a lived-in area that also added some mystery of who this person was and the loneliness of maybe being stranded out here at this outpost. So the Atomic Crater location I thought was a great spot to build this little outpost, and it just adds another dimension of mystery and intrigue as to where it is, what it is. And as I said, with the added weather elements, adding in some extra dust, just made it not a very welcoming place and not a good place to jump to, I guess.
Bombs away!
Now jumping here and then jumping away from this location, I needed some kind of portal gate that I could use to show our character arriving to the location and also leaving, but more specifically arriving to this location. So for the arriving scene here at the Atom Crater, very similar to what I did at Vault 88, is blowing our character out of the mortar into our scene. And I would do that by building a portion of the atomic crater. And I went to Abernathy Farm to try and create the illusion that you were in the atomic crater. And the way I did that was I used a lot of ground pieces that were very similar to the atomic crater. And I made a huge flat area at Abernathy in front of our mortar cannon, just so I could get that shot of our character just getting tossed into the atomic crater. And after quite a few tries, I was able to get a decent shot that would work, that I think would give the illusion of the character landing in the atomic crater. And this is also the same technique that I used at the end of the series when our character basically gets sent back to the Fallout world. All these locations and all these little tricks and pieces helped me tell this story as I was building the island's house. I just wanted to try something different. It wasn't perfect, but it worked pretty well. And then obviously editing in the story combined with the whole speed build was also something different. I knew I wanted to build on the island in, some kind of survival, castaway shelter type, scenario. Nothing too elaborate, not a ton of episodes. I didn't want to go overboard, which is what I almost always do in my builds. I just keep building and it gets bigger and bigger and they just go on forever. So I wanted to try and do something a little shorter. And I think I was able to cut it all together and make something unique in regards to a build video and some of the storytelling elements. The best I could, at least with a console, which is very difficult because you can't really get these characters to say what you want them to say and do what you want them to do. I just tried to get any shots I could that would work well when editing. So close up, a wide shot, a side shot, and try and edit it in my head and get these shots, doing the best I can with the game capture abilities. Editing helped me create the story by using some of the shots that I was able to get and adding in the sound effects and some of the music. That all helps. The narration, although not popular with some people, was the best way I could tell the story through the character's point of view, just because I can't on the console have the character say what I want it to say. So I feel like in this instance, writing it out and doing the whole text-to-speech narration was unique and definitely something different, which is what I wanted to do in the first place. So in the end, I think it turned out pretty good, but you tell me in the comments if you like this kind of build, if you like the narration part, if you like story involved in the build videos, because I think it takes a lot of time to make them. I enjoy it, but at the same time, I know it might not be for everyone. But like I said, I just wanted to try something different. So that pretty much concludes our little tour, kind of behind the scenes look at the making of this series and some of the builds and the interiors and how they were built and how the whole series kind of came about. So I hope you enjoyed this series, and thanks for stopping by. Thanks for watching, And as always, until next time, keep building.